Hi, my name is Grant Shipman. I'm the founder of Living Smith, and we are going to talk about communication. This is a central part of the Living Smith complete household system. Communication. Any problem among good people can be solved through clear communication. So that's what we're covering. So any business, any sports team, any household, any relationship needs to have an understood process of how you communicate and also how you request to be able to communicate, because not everybody can drop everything at a moment's notice and communicate. So I have a good friend. I went to college with him. He was a best man in my wedding. He is a higher up in Target, and he has explained to me this awesome thing within Target. They have a word, they call it status. If anybody at any level of Target needs to communicate on something with someone specific, they will say, hey, can we status? And that means maybe there's an issue, maybe there's, who knows, fill in the blank, a conflict, but they want to have a one-on-one conversation, and that's called a status. Whenever anybody in Target hears that word, they know to respect the request. And they take it serious because they want to have healthy communication. So in the Living Smith Complete Household System, it is a 5-on-5. That's what we use. It was actually adopted by a household that was started by people who went on to create Whole Foods, the super large grocery chain that's now owned by Amazon. They did such an incredible job that their grocery store ballooned and became national, and I think now it's multinational. In the same way, they created a household of 8 adults, and they used a system called 5-on-5, and that's what we use. We adopted it, so we didn't come up with this, and we are very grateful to use it. It's incredibly simple. It's incredibly powerful. It is in the household covenant, and we're going to go over it right now. So in general, there's a term called 5-on-5. I'm going to read this directly from the household covenant. You're welcome to do that in the same way. So 5-on-5. This is point 8 in the household covenant. A 2 house member conversation. So there's only 2 residents in this conversation. It's a 2 house member conversation when one speaks for 5 minutes while the other one listens. And then the other speaks for 5 minutes while the first speaker listens. A 5-on-5 may be prompted by a household question or concern. It may be prompted by personal conflict, advice seeking, or just the need to share with somebody. To request a 5-on-5, simply say, can we do a 5-on-5? House members will take the request for 5-on-5s with urgency, even if they have to schedule it for a later time or day. So a 5-on-5 is very simple. All it is somebody, when I do 5-on-5s, because I've been in the households, I would actually take out my phone and set a timer, because I wanted to make sure that if I was listening, that I didn't interrupt. That person had an uninterrupted 5 minutes to talk. And then the other one, when I was talking, I wanted to make sure I didn't go overboard. Now, all 5 minutes isn't needed, but the speaker gets up to 5 minutes. So we also protect against overly long monologues. So in a 5-on-5, somebody speaks for 5 minutes and somebody listens for 5 minutes, and then the roles switch, and now the listener is going to talk for 5 minutes. It's a great idea in the first part of that 5 minutes for the person to say in their own words what the person said to them in the previous 5 minutes, right? So a 5-on-5, there's no other things besides a 5-minute monologue and 5-minute listening, and then those roles switch place, and there's a 5-minute monologue, 5-minute listening. And this is big because taking out all kinds of other conflict resolution, all of this stuff, is if you just feel listened to, that solves a big part of the problem. Also, if you just understand where a person's coming from, that relieves all, if not most, of the tension. So that is a big deal. A 5-on-5, very simple, and it can happen in 10 minutes. This is key. It's highly respected within the households and the complete household system by Living Smith. This is our means of requesting communication and having important communication. It's much better than somebody saying, we need to talk, because that is loaded with all kinds of tension and feelings and all of that stuff. Instead, we say, hey, can we do a 5-on-5? And somebody else says, of course, I've got time right now. Or they may say, actually, I've got to run off to work. Can we do it tonight at 6 p.m.? That sounds great. Now let's talk about a 5-on-5 in regard to conflict resolution, because conflict is a good and healthy part of a household. A healthy household isn't an absence of conflict. It actually is a healthy response to conflict. Conflict is the main way that house members actually build trust and appreciation. Once in a while, they're going to step on each other's toes or bump shoulders the wrong way, and that is an opportunity to actually grow closer if there is open communication, and that's what the 5-on-5 does. So conflict resolution through 5-on-5. I'm going to read this again directly, and then we're going to unpack it. So this is straight from the Household Covenant. If at least one of the house members feels the question or concern was not resolved by the 5-on-5, right? So they just had a 5-on-5 and it was about a conflict. Say somebody thought somebody else's dog was ruining the backyard, and they wanted to talk on that. And so they did their first 5-on-5. And at the end of that 5-on-5, it's saying that at least one of the two people is not satisfied with the 5-on-5. So that's all it takes. If that happens, then both will choose a day and time to repeat the 5-on-5 within 5 days. Sometimes it's nice to sleep on something. Sometimes it's nice to let what somebody said seep in. So schedule it for at least the next day, but it's going to be within the next 5 days. So then this 5-on-5 is repeated. So this is the second 5-on-5 between only those two house members, and that's key. So these house members are not talking with other people in the house about it. This is a private matter, and the house members are choosing to directly communicate with each other. They did that once, and they weren't satisfied with the resolution, so they repeated it within 5 days. If following this second 5-on-5, at least one of the two house members feels the question or concern is still unresolved, then another house member, so a third resident that both residents agree on, will be asked to join for the next 5-on-5. So this is a third 5-on-5. It includes the original two and another house member that they have chosen. So again, that this issue is still a private matter. People feel respected when there's not gossip or unneeded side conversation. The parties involved are directly communicating, and they're respecting one another by keeping that communication private. But at this point, sometimes when the two people who are part of the problem are the only ones trying to solve the problem, that it actually doesn't get solved because they're the reason the problem exists. So they decide on a third house member, and then they have a 5-on-5-on-5, which is just like it sounds. Somebody talks for 5 minutes, other two listen for 5 minutes, second person talks for 5 minutes, other two listen for 5 minutes, then that third house member comes in and then they talk for 5 minutes. That third house member, they don't need to solve the problem. Maybe they're just a sounding board. They don't have to feel pressured as like a counselor or a conflict resolution person. They're just brought in as a third perspective, and sometimes that third perspective makes the original two people with the conflict have everything worked out. So there's a 5-on-5-on-5, and that's the third 5-on-5. So if this does not resolve matters, then the property manager, which is the household supporter, is contacted. This is the other role that the household supporter has agreed to do for the households. So basically, once we get to this 5-on-5-on-5, if that is not solved the issue, and the issue is only solved if both of the two people agree and they're happy with things, or they're happy enough with things. So it doesn't matter if one person thinks it's resolved. If somebody doesn't think the issue is resolved, then the issue is still an issue. So at that point, once it's been 5 on 5 on 5 has happened and the issue is still not resolved, then basically a person needs to be brought in to make a decision. And that person is the household supporter, not because they're an authority figure, but because this is a service that they're going to provide. So that household supporter will be contacted by those 3 people, and they will set up a meeting to do a discussion. And at that time, it's going to be similar. There's going to be a 5 on 5 on 5 again when those 3 people are there. And the household supporter is then going to say what they think, and they're going to take an action. There's no step past this. This solves the issue. And maybe it's an issue where not everybody's going to be happy, or maybe it's a resolution that the household supporter brings where everybody is happy. But that's where things end. There's not a step after that. The household supporter has been hired to fulfill this role and entrusted this responsibility by the household. So that's how the 5 on 5 works within Living Smith homes, and it works really well. If I can give some encouragement here, is 98% of conflicts are resolved by the initial 5 on 5. It doesn't need repeated. Another 1% are resolved by the second 5 on 5. I've only known twice in my 18 years of living in the houses that it's gone to a 5 on 5 on 5 where 3 people needed to get together and talk, and I've never heard of when the household supporter needs to get involved. So to say how effective and fantastic the 5 on 5 is, its track record is incredible. So understand it well, have it passed on to your residents, and it's going to be wonderful for everyone. Until then, go live your daydreams.